Hello and welcome to the deep dive. Today we're doing something, well, truly unique and maybe a little bit wild. Our entire source material for this deep dive, it's just 3 words. That's right, you heard me, just 3 words. How to speak English. Oh, I know what you might be thinking. 3 words, really. What can you possibly deep dive into there? And honestly, that's exactly the challenge for us, and the intrigue, too. That's our mission today. We're setting out to prove that even a phrase this simple, I mean, really simple, when you explore it thoroughly, it can reveal these incredibly complex layers of human aspiration, global significance, and, the whole intricate journey of learning a skill.
Exactly. And that minimalist nature, it's not a limitation at all. I actually think it's a fascinating opportunity. We're not just going to look at the literal content, obviously. There's, not much there. Instead, this deep dive is going to go way beyond those 3 words. We'll explore what this title signifies. What universal needs does it tap into globally? What are the profound, maybe unspoken challenges it implies for, millions of learners out there? And the huge global context it sits in that just makes it resonate so strongly. So our mission today is really to unpack the deep meaning and, frankly, the sheer continuous, almost insatiable demand that's embedded in this incredibly short phrase. Hopefully we can give you a fresh perspective, maybe even a surprising one, on language learning itself and really on the whole idea of how-to guides.
Okay, let's jump right in then. Just these 3 words. How to speak English. When you first see a title like that, maybe on a book, where you type it into a search engine, what's the immediate message? What does it instantly communicate? And what kind of promise does it make? Because for me, right away, it signals a solution, a direct, actionable solution.
It's immediately practical.
Totally. And think about the whole how-to genre. It doesn't matter what field, right? It has this amazing universal appeal, whether it's how to change a tire or how to bake sourdough or like here, how to speak English. These guides promise answers. They promise to demystify something that feels, daunting, maybe completely out of reach.
Right, they break it down.
Exactly. And there's a real psychological comfort in that, isn't there? When you're looking at something complex, feels like climbing a mountain sometimes. Having a structured approach, step by step.
Yeah.
It makes the whole thing feel achievable, almost simplified. You're not, after abstract theory, you're not reading philosophy. You want actionable steps, practical advice. And ideally, some kind of measurable progress you can actually see and feel.
Yeah, you want results.
Precisely. The implicit understanding always is that the person looking for this guide has a problem they need to solve. In this case, it's the inability or maybe just the difficulty of speaking English. And this title just swoops right in, promising to fix it. It's like the ultimate promise of transformation, isn't it? From struggle to competence.
It absolutely is a powerful hook.
And then there's the specificity of English. Why this language? I mean, sure, there are how-to guides for loads of languages, but the fact that our source representing this whole idea is just how to speak English, well, that points to its unique status, doesn't it? It really highlights why English specifically is the subject of such a, ubiquitous how-to guide, one that can just stand alone like that.
Its global position is undeniable.
Right. The immediate recognition of English as a globally used language, you can't argue with that. It's not just any language. It's often seen as the language, the fundamental gateway to so many other things. And the goal stated is just incredibly simple, but really powerful and clear to actively speak it. No academic jargon, no hedging about nuances or dialects, just how to speak English, direct, concise, and, incredibly compelling.
It really is fascinating how that title functions, isn't it? It's like this compact, incredibly powerful piece of marketing. A tiny, perfect advertisement. It taps into this common aspiration that resonates with, literally millions, maybe even billions of people across the globe. And then it offers this direct, seemingly straightforward path to getting there. So in essence, it speaks directly to a really fundamental human desire for competence, for connection, for just expanding your horizons, professionally, socially, personally.
Yeah, it's like a shortcut implied.
Kind of. It's a very clever piece of linguistic packaging, really, designed to grab your attention immediately and promise you that solution you're looking for.
And who is it promising that to? I mean, the audience.
Oh, the implied audience is just vast.
Yeah.
And incredibly diverse. Think about it. It could be a young professional in, say, Shanghai aiming for an international career. Or a student in Brazil hoping to study overseas, maybe a family in Syria trying to integrate into a new country, or even, a retiree in Japan who just wants to connect with tourists or understand movies better.
All with very different starting points and goals.
Exactly. Each of these individuals might feel really frustrated by where they are with English, maybe overwhelmed by how huge the task seems, or just feeling lost. lacking direction in how they're trying to learn. And their motivations are just as varied and often deeply personal. We're talking about everything from getting ahead professionally in this globalized job market to just wanting to travel more freely and have meaningful interactions, or pursuing higher academic qualifications. Or sometimes it's simply a deep desire for personal growth, right? For broader communication with people from totally different cultures.
It covers so many bases.
It really does. And the title, in its beautiful simplicity, it acts like a beacon. It offers hope. It gives a tangible objective. And it creates this sense that this daunting mountain, well, maybe it can be climbed, or at least the first few steps are clearly marked out.
That leads nicely into something you mentioned earlier, this kind of paradox.
Ah, yes, the simplicity versus complexity paradox. I find this really interesting. The elegant simplicity of those three words, how to speak English, it completely belies the immense, almost overwhelming complexity of actually mastering a language like English. I mean, it's a vast, dynamic system, sounds, grammar, vocabulary, cultural nuances. It takes years, often a lifetime, really, to truly grasp it all.
But the title makes it sound easy.
Well, not easy necessarily, but approachable, conquerable, almost like following a recipe. And that's its genius in a way.
Yeah.
And also, perhaps, its subtle deception. It creates that immediate connection with the learner, that sense of possibility. Maybe it oversimplifies things a bit at the start, which makes taking that first step less intimidating.
Lowering the barrier to entry.
Precisely. It's like promising to break down an elephant into bite-sized pieces, even if those pieces are still, pretty substantial. The challenge, of course, is that many learners, once they dive in, they can feel a bit betrayed by that initial simplicity when they hit the real depth and difficulty.
Yeah, I can see that, leading to frustration.
Exactly. Frustration, maybe burnout, which just underscores this delicate balance that language learning materials have to strike. You need to be encouraging, but you also need to be realistic. So the title clears a critical psychological hurdle right at the beginning. But that same simplicity can become a barrier later if expectations aren't managed.
That's a really insightful point about the potential. Well, the psychological cost, maybe, but that inherent promise, that immediate sense of approachability, that's what gets the learner to even consider the journey in the first place. But okay, once they step onto that path, they quickly realize that the word speak, wow, that carries enormous weight. Let's zoom right in on that specific word, speak. What does it truly encompass? Because it's obviously more than just knowing a list of words or understanding a few grammar rules, isn't it? What are the layers of proficiency we're really talking about when someone says they want to speak English?
Oh, it's multi-layered. Absolutely.
Okay, let's try and break down those dimensions. Effective speaking. Because it's way more nuanced than just making sounds. First off, pronunciation and intonation. This gets overlooked so often, especially early on, but it's absolutely crucial. Crucial for communication.
Hugely important.
You can know every word in the dictionary, right? But if your pronunciation is way off, or your intonation is just flat, unnatural, people won't understand you, or you might sound robotic. Or even worse, you might accidentally convey the wrong emotion entirely.
Right. The music of the language.
Exactly. It's about using the correct stress patterns in words and the right rise and fall of your voice in sentences, that's intonation, to convey meaning, emotion. Think about how just changing the intonation slightly turns a statement like, you're going, into a question, you're going. That tiny shift is critical, and it's where so many learners stumble. It can lead to real communication breakdowns, even if the grammar is technically perfect.
Absolutely. It's fundamental for being understood correctly.
Then there's that tricky balance, isn't there? Fluency versus accuracy. This is such a common dilemma for learners. Is it better to speak quickly, keep the conversation flowing, even if you make a few mistakes along the way? Or should you speak slowly, carefully, aiming for perfect grammatical accuracy every time?
It's a constant tension.
It really is. And a truly good how-to guide, I think, would imply achieving both. But over time, it needs to recognize that initial fluency, even with some errors, can actually build confidence, keeps the learner engaged. While accuracy gets refined later through ongoing practice and feedback, the main goal is getting your message across clearly and smoothly, right? And sometimes prioritizing fluency early on is just key to staying motivated, not letting the perfect be the enemy of the good.
Finding that balance is crucial for long-term progress.
And we absolutely cannot forget the psychological side of speaking. Confidence, overcoming inhibition. This is massive. The fear of making mistakes, the anxiety of real-time interaction, worrying about sounding silly or being misunderstood.
Oh, the fear factor is real.
It's huge. I mean, who hasn't been there? That moment you try to order coffee in a new language and suddenly your brain just goes blank. All the English you knew just evaporates.
Like stage fright for your tongue.
Exactly. Your tongue has stage fright. So a how-to guide on speaking English, even implicitly, it has to address building that confidence. It needs strategies for managing anxiety, creating a mindset where mistakes are seen as a necessary part of learning, not some kind of failure. It's about finding your voice, your authentic voice, and having the courage to actually use it.
Empowering the learner to take risks.
Yes. And finally, there's the pursuit of naturalness. Idiomatic expression. This is where you move beyond just literal word-for-word translation. You start to understand and actually use common phrases, idioms, maybe some slang where it's appropriate, even those little conversational fillers that make speech sound authentic, less like a tech art book.
Getting the rhythm and flow right?
Yeah, it's the difference between saying, I don't know, it is raining very much, versus it's raining cats and dogs, or knowing when to use which one, or understanding that break a leg means good luck, not, well, you know. This is what really unlocks nuanced communication, deeper connection. It allows you to convey not just information, but personality too, cultural understanding.
Absolutely. It's moving beyond functional communication to something richer.
Yeah.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the real emphasis on speaking here, it's inherently about active, real-time communication. It's about interaction, producing language, not just passively consuming it, which I think raises a really important question. What does this title, How to Speak English, suggest about the ultimate goal of language learning for most people, as distinct from, say, just being able to read it well?
That's a great question. What is the implied goal?
Well, the ultimate purpose of language, when you boil it right down, isn't just knowing rules or having a huge vocabulary filed away in your brain. Fundamentally, it's about exchanging ideas, thoughts, feelings, effectively, with other humans. And the title implicitly acknowledges this very pragmatic, outcome-focused goal. It implies a really crucial shift, moving from passive knowledge, being able to read, understand what you hear, to active production.
Making the language yourself.
Exactly. Bridging that gap between comprehension and expression, turning those internal linguistic structures into actual, audible, meaningful utterances that connect with someone else. This isn't just about passing a test or ticking a box on a form. It's about participating in the world, being heard, understanding others in real time. It's about agency, really.
And it's not something you do alone, is it? Speaking implies interaction.
Precisely. Speaking doesn't exist in a vacuum. It relies so heavily on other skills, especially active listening. You simply cannot speak well or have a meaningful conversation if you can't understand what the other person is saying to you. It's a two-way street, isn't it? A constant dance of input and output.
Listening and responding.
Right. The dynamic nature of conversation means you're constantly listening, processing, formulating responses, adapting your speech in real time based on the verbal and nonverbal feedback you get. So a guide focused purely on speaking must, by necessity, also implicitly cultivate strong listening skills. Because effective communication is this continuous integrated loop, like a complex symphony maybe, where every instrument relies on the others.
Okay, so if that's the case, what does this mean for what a really comprehensive How to Speak English guide would actually need to include?
Well, the implications are pretty significant. It definitely wouldn't just be a dry grammar textbook filled with verb conjugations and rules you have to memorize. Instead, it would need to be absolutely packed with practical exercises, actionable strategies, real-world scenarios, all designed specifically to practice active speaking.
Like role-playing.
Exactly. Role-playing for specific situations. Ordering food, asking for directions, handling a job interview, guided dialogues, prompts to encourage spontaneous speech, and detailed techniques for pronunciation, for intonation, for connected speech. It suggests a really strong focus on practical application, functional language, how to actually do things with English.
Not just know about English.
Precisely. How to order food confidently, ask for directions effectively, maybe negotiate prices in a market, or participate robustly in a business meeting. It's this practical communicative orientation that lifts it from just an academic study to a truly useful tool for life, for opportunity.
Okay, so given this really complex understanding of what speaking actually means, we then have to turn to why. Why is there such a massive, continuous, seemingly insatiable global demand for this specific skill? Why is How to Speak English this universal title we see everywhere, rather than just one among many language guides? what pushed English into this unique global spot.
That's the crux of it, isn't it?
It really is. And it largely comes down to English's established role as the undisputed global lingua franca. Let's really break that down, though. What does that mean in practice, and why does it matter so much? First, you've got business and commerce. English is just dominant in international trade and multinational corporations, global finance, professional communication across borders.
It's the language of global business.
Absolutely. Think about industries like tech or pharmaceuticals, aviation. English is very often the default language for internal comms, product development, client relations, even if the companies themselves are based in non-English speaking countries. So if you want to work for an international company or get involved in global supply chains or access bigger markets, English proficiency is often just non-negotiable, a prerequisite.
Opens doors. Huge doors.
It really does. Better job opportunities, career advancement, even starting businesses that cross borders. It gives people a serious competitive edge in this globalized economy. It's simply how global business gets done.
And then there's travel.
Right. Travel and tourism. For anyone traveling between continents, English is almost always the common language you'll bump into. Airports, hotels, restaurants, tourist sites, pretty much everywhere. From the biggest cities to surprisingly remote places, it just makes navigating easier. It allows for those spontaneous interactions with locals, with other travelers. It really enriches the experience of exploring different cultures, doesn't it? Without being totally reliant on translation apps or guides all the time.
Fosters connection.
Totally. You can haggle in a market in Morocco, ask for directions in Tokyo, make a new friend on a train in Europe. It just makes the world feel a bit smaller, more accessible, turns a potentially isolating trip into a series of meaningful connections.
What about education?
Oh, education is huge. English is the gateway to world-class academic resources, groundbreaking research, many of the top universities globally. Think about the major scientific journals, the cutting-edge research coming out. A huge chunk of that is published in English first. And countless university programs, especially at the postgraduate level, they require high levels of English proficiency just to get in. Even if the main instruction isn't in English, you often need it for supplementary materials for collaborating internationally.
So it's key for accessing global knowledge.
Absolutely. If you want to engage with the cutting edge of what humanity knows, English is often your key, your ticket in.
And that ties into science and tech directly.
Directly. English is predominant for scientific publications, technical documentation, and it's the foundation for most coding languages, most open source communities online. The vast majority of new tech innovations, new research findings, they're first communicated and spread in English. So to be at the forefront of those fields, or even just to keep up with the rapid pace of change, English proficiency is almost a must-have. It ensures you're part of that global conversation driving progress.
And then there's the cultural side.
Yeah, culture and entertainment. Just think about the massive global reach of English language movies, Hollywood and beyond, popular music from artists all over the world, classic literature, contemporary novels, and of course the absolutely vast ocean of digital content online, the internet, streaming platforms, social media. So much of it is in English. Learning English gives you direct, unfiltered access to all of this rich cultural stuff. You can appreciate it more deeply without the nuances getting lost in translation. You can engage with the global conversation directly, understand the latest memes, follow international creators in their own voice.
It unlocks a huge amount of content.
Definitely. And beyond these big categories, the individual reasons people learn English are just incredibly diverse, deeply personal. For loads of people, it's about serious professional advancement, getting new jobs, promotions, being considered for those international assignments that were previously out of reach.
Better opportunities.
Exactly. For others, it's more about personal enrichment, the sheer joy of immersing yourself in another culture, building real connections with people from totally different backgrounds, or just engaging with global media in its original form. For students, yeah, it's often specific academic goals, studying abroad, accessing research in their field, collaborating internationally. And for a really significant number of people globally, especially those moving or thinking about migrating, English proficiency is just essential. For daily life, finding work, getting public services, successfully integrating into English-speaking countries, it's a critical tool for survival, for thriving, for building a new life.
That's a really comprehensive picture of the demand. Which leads me back to the challenge. This widespread, incredibly diverse demand you've laid out so clearly, it raises a really important question. What challenges does this sheer universality pose? Especially for the idea of a single universal guide on how to speak English. How can one book or one course possibly cater effectively to such a huge range of needs, contexts, starting points? It almost sounds impossible.
Yeah, how do you make one size fit all when the all is so incredibly varied?
Well, one immediate challenge is just the sheer variety of English itself. We say English, but which English are we actually talking about?
Yeah.
You've got distinct national forms, right? British English, American English, Australian, Canadian, each with its own quirks in vocabulary, spelling, pronunciation.
Like lift versus elevator?
Exactly. And then, even more importantly, you have countless regional accents within those forms. And perhaps even more significantly now, you have the rise of global Englishes, or English as a lingua franca, the English spoken by billions of non-native speakers communicating with each other. These often develop their own established conventions, sometimes not perfectly intelligible to native speakers, but highly effective for specific international contexts, like business. Think about things like Globish, this simplified functional English.
So which one does the how-to guide teach?
That's the problem. A truly universal guide has to either pick a widely accepted standard, usually General American or maybe British English, and teach that, or it has to try and cover these variations, which just explodes the complexity and can really dilute the focus. How do you teach one English when the reality out there is so diverse and fluid? It means that while the title offers simplicity, the actual content needed is anything but simple, and it can quickly become overwhelming for the learner.
That makes sense. And then there's culture, right? You can't really separate language from culture.
Not at all. Language is inextricably intertwined with culture. The way we speak, the politeness strategies we use, our sense of humor, how direct or indirect we are, how we manage conversation flow, the subtleties of sarcasm or irony, these are all profoundly shaped by culture. And the difficulty of teaching these cultural nuances in a generic language guide is immense.
How so?
Well, just learning words and grammar doesn't teach you the appropriate situations to use formal versus informal language, for example, or how to navigate a delicate conversation in a culturally sensitive way in, say, London versus New York versus Sydney. Speaking English effectively often means understanding a fair bit about the cultural context where it's being used. And a basic how-to guide can really only scratch the surface of this, which can potentially lead to awkward moments or cultural misunderstandings, even if your grammar is perfect.
Right, saying the right thing in the wrong way, culturally speaking.
Exactly. And we also have to think about the profound economic and social implications of English proficiency. For many people, English isn't just another skill, it's a gateway, almost like a form of modern literacy in a way. It can be a direct path to economic mobility, better jobs, higher salaries, improved living standards. It's also a form of social capital. It grants access to networks, information, opportunities that might otherwise be completely unavailable.
Which creates huge pressure to learn it.
A significant, often urgent incentive for learners, yes. The stakes feel incredibly high. But this universal demand also throws potential inequalities into sharp relief, doesn't it? It can put highly skilled people whose native language isn't English at a disadvantage if they lack access to good, affordable English education. So that simple title, How to Speak English, it carries this heavy weight of aspiration, hope, and the very real, sometimes unequal impact it can have on a person's entire life trajectory. It's not just about learning a language. For many, it's about navigating these complex, global socioeconomic structures.
That's a really powerful point about inequality. It definitely shifts the perspective from just individual achievement to these broader societal forces. Okay, so given this huge demand and the incredibly nuanced reality of what speaking actually involves, it forces us to ask, what specific content, what approaches would a truly comprehensive guide on how to speak English actually need to cover? To genuinely live up to that profound promise, what would be the essential building blocks, the things you absolutely must include to take someone from really struggling to speaking confidently?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it, for anyone creating language learning resources?
It really is. If you listening right now, or if we here were designing the ultimate how to speak English guide, what are the non-negotiables? What has to be in there? Because it's definitely a multifaceted journey, not just a simple destination.
Agreed. It's a complex structure you'd need to build.
Okay, first, you'd absolutely need the core linguistic components, but specifically framed for speaking, moving beyond just recognizing stuff to actually producing it actively. So let's start with vocabulary. Acquiring words. It's just not enough to memorize lists, is it?
No, Rote memorization has its limits.
Right. A truly great guide would teach strategies beyond that, focusing on contextual learning, how words are actually used in real sentences, in specific situations, not just in isolation. It would emphasize collocations, those words that just naturally sound right together, like make a decision, not do a decision, or heavy rain, not strong rain.
Natural word pairings.
Yeah.
Crucial for fluency.
Totally. And it would have to prioritize high-frequency words and phrases, the stuff you'll actually use most often in daily conversation, and incorporate active recall methods like spaced repetition systems to really solidify those words in your memory so you can retrieve them quickly, spontaneously when you're actually talking.
Making the vocabulary active, not passive.
Exactly. Then there's grammar, the fundamentals, but again, crucially applied to speaking. We're moving beyond just knowing the theoretical rules from a textbook to how you practically apply them in spoken sentences. How do you actually use verb tenses correctly in a real-time conversation without pausing to mentally diagram the sentence? How do you form questions naturally, using the right auxiliary verbs without thinking too hard?
Turning rules into reflexes.
Yes. A comprehensive guide would need to pinpoint those common grammatical errors that non-native speakers often make specifically when speaking, and then provide practical, targeted drills to overcome them. It's all about building fluent, accurate sentences on the fly, transforming abstract rules into automatic habits, like building verbal muscle memory.
And the sound system.
Yes. A really deep dive into speaking has to cover phonology and connected speech. This is where English really comes alive and sounds natural. So we're talking about detailed exploration of individual sounds, especially those that might not exist in the learner's native language. Practicing minimal pairs to really hear and produce the difference between tricky sounds like sheep and ship, or maybe L and R for some learners.
Getting the individual sounds right.
Right. Then it moves up to stress patterns within individual words and across entire sentences. Where do you put the emphasis to convey the right meaning, the right emotion? And finally, connected speech. This is huge. How words actually link together and change in natural, rapid speech. Think about common reductions like gonna for going to, wanna for want to, or how did you often sounds more like did ya.
The secret rules of spoken English.
Exactly. These invisible rules are often not explicitly taught in standard textbooks, but they are absolutely fundamental for being understood and for sounding fluent. A truly effective guide would break down these elements that native speakers pick up intuitively, but non-natives often miss entirely, which leads to misunderstandings and frustration.
So mastering the components is key. But that's not enough, is it?
Not even close. Knowing the components isn't speaking. The guide would need a massive focus on practical application, active practice, which means things like role-playing, simulated conversations, the importance of practicing these real-world scenarios, whether you do it alone, with a language partner, or a teacher, you just can't overstate it. It builds that muscle memory, builds confidence, and actually prepares you for real-life interactions. Ordering coffee, giving directions, handling a job interview. It's basically rehearsal for life.
Making it real.
Yes. And it would also need to provide strategies for using authentic media effectively. It's not just about passively watching a movie or listening to a song. No, it's about actively learning from movies, TV shows, podcasts, music, by really focusing on listening for speech patterns, mimicking pronunciation and intonation, maybe using techniques like shadowing, where you speak along with the audio, and noticing idiomatic expressions used in context.
Learning from real-world input.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it would need interactive exercises, techniques for practicing speaking out loud, repeating phrases with real intention, maybe self-recording your speech so you can listen back objectively and spot areas to improve. And of course, a truly useful guide would strongly encourage and maybe even provide avenues for engaging with native or proficient speakers. Language exchange apps, online platforms, local meetups, travel. That's the ultimate real-world test, isn't it? And the most rewarding kind of practice.
Bringing it all together through interaction.
And finally, I think a truly transformative guide has to address the human element, overcoming those common obstacles, sustaining motivation. This means actively tackling the fear of making mistakes, providing techniques to build confidence, reframing errors not as failures, but as valuable learning opportunities, reasons to adjust, not to stop.
Managing the psychology of learning.
Definitely. It would need to offer strategies for breaking through those frustrating plateaus. You know, when progress seems to just slow down or stop altogether, how do you keep going? Suggesting new learning methods, maybe refocusing your efforts. How do you stay motivated when the initial buzz wears off? And it would need to guide learners in dealing with nuance, understanding and integrating idioms, slang, cultural references appropriately, knowing when and how to use them. And critically, I think it would help learners develop self-correction skills, empowering them to identify and fix their own errors independently, fostering real autonomy, turning them into lifelong learners, not just passive recipients of information.
That's a very comprehensive picture. And what's fascinating as you lay all that out is that the title itself, How to Speak English, implies this very structured, progressive path through what is inherently a really complex, organic process. Language learning isn't always neat and linear, is it? It has peaks, valleys, sudden breakthroughs, long plateaus.
Yeah, it's messy.
It is messy. But the title suggests that even though language is fluid and constantly evolving, there are indeed repeatable, learnable steps. There's a methodological framework you can use to navigate that fluidity. It turns what feels like an art into something that can actually be taught, a skill that can be developed.
Like mapping out the messy journey.
Exactly. The learner's journey, implicitly mapped out by a guide like this, would trace that progression. From the foundational knowledge, basic sounds, words, grammar, through to conversational fluency, where communication flows pretty freely, ideas get exchanged without too much inhibition. And then eventually, for some dedicated learners, reaching near native proficiency, mastering nuance, subtlety, cultural references. It's a journey that demands patience, persistence, and definitely a willingness to embrace imperfection along the way.
Which brings us back to practice.
Absolutely. This whole process just reinforces the vital importance of deliberate practice. Speaking is a skill. And like any skill, it improves with consistent, targeted effort. Just like learning a musical instrument or mastering a sport or perfecting a craft, it's not just about having some kind of natural talent. It's about showing up, putting in the work day after day, focusing on specific weaknesses, consistently building on strengths, bit by bit.
The grind behind the fluency.
That's a good way to put it. And central to making that grind effective, central to that whole iterative process, is the indispensable role of feedback. Whether it's constructive criticism from experienced teachers, insights from language exchange partners or just peers, or even critical self-assessment, recording yourself, listening back. Receiving and then actually integrating that feedback is absolutely necessary for improvement.
You need to know what to fix.
Precisely. Feedback helps learners identify where they went wrong, maybe understand why they went wrong, and then adjust their approach for the next time. Without targeted feedback, progress can just stall. Or worse, errors can become really deeply ingrained habits, making them much harder to correct later on. Feedback is like the compass that guides the journey towards mastery.
It keeps you on track.
It does. So as we reflect on all of this, thinking about everything packed into that simple title, what stands out to you, our listener, about the comprehensive, almost overwhelming nature implied by How to Speak English? And what challenges or maybe triumphs from your own learning journey does this bring to mind? Whether it was learning a language or an instrument, a sport, any complex skill really. Think about the steps you took, the plateaus you inevitably hit. How did you eventually break through them? How much was structured how-to learning? And how much was just pure grit and perseverance?
Wow. Yeah. From just 3 words, How to Speak English. We really have unpacked an incredible amount of depth here. It's so much more than just a title, isn't it? It's like a microcosm of human aspiration, a window into global connection, and a real testament to the intricate, often challenging, but ultimately pretty rewarding journey of acquiring a complex skill.
It really is.
Yeah.
And if we connect that back to the bigger picture one last time, that widespread, enduring desire for a guide titled How to Speak English, it reflects something really fundamental, I think. A fundamental human drive for connection, for understanding others beyond our immediate circle, and for unlocking new opportunities in this increasingly interconnected multilingual world we all live in. It really speaks to our innate need to communicate, to collaborate, to reach beyond our own boundaries.
Yeah. The very existence, the universal appeal of a guide titled How to Speak English, it speaks volumes, not just about the English language itself, powerful as it is, but about the enduring human spirit of learning and the incredible, often really arduous journey so many people undertake to master something new and difficult. It's a pursuit driven by all sorts of things, necessity, curiosity, and just that sheer, powerful desire to connect, to achieve, and ultimately to expand one's world.
Well said.
So as you go about your day, maybe think about this. What other seemingly simple phrases or titles out there, when you really stop and deep dive into what they imply and the huge context surrounding them, might hold such profound layers of meaning, such echoes of human endeavor? And maybe reflect on your own experience, learning any complex skill, language, music, craft, whatever it is. What does that ongoing process of mastery teach you, even long after you've learned the initial how-to? Because that initial how-to, Really, it's just the invitation, isn't it? The true deep dive into mastery. Well, that never truly ends.